Cave, eine Klinik im Untergrund.
I heard about Dr. Amani through um, her works, and especially she's the first female doctors that to lead an hospital, and that was like a little bit like a lot of news about her. So we was shooting for 1 year, we didn't know that Dr. Amani will be the main characters until I just heard, as I say, those stories about she's the first female doctor to lead an hospital. She's the only woman in the war zone to do this job, and her hospital was like more than 140 people. She's responsible about 400,000 civilians was under siege, and she wasn't work as a doctor, just she was facing and social issues in this society, try to bring a woman to work, and a lot of women inspire to apply to come to work to the hospital because our manager is a woman. And that was like more bigger change than just an imagine about a normal story about like hospital being bombed in Syria film. So I decided like to follow her in and continue with filming. And she's until the end of the film she didn't know that she's the main subject until I show her the film after the first draft from the films and editing draft, and she was surprised. She said like, okay, it's about me, and I don't want that. I want about all the other doctors. I said like the story of you, it represent more things than you can imagine. So she was surprising in this way, and like feeling humble, and she didn't want to like take credit from other doctors who's facing and fighting for their society also. But a lot of conversation happened after that, and to tell her how much it's important to be like in the film. The first the first idea that I discussed with a sound designer, Peter Albertson, the Danish sound designer, and Lars, the German sound editor, our dialogue editors. We just discuss ideas about the sound, a person like Bergman, a person like Tarkovsky, they use the silence because their environment, they was struggling with the silence in their environment full of silence. In my environment, the noise is the issue. Everything around us is a noise. And silence, this is noise, it's a problematic way because those people, they don't know what is the silence in the story. So we need to establish what kind of the sound they face around them, like what kind of the environment of this a war environment, so the sound environment in the war in generally. There's no any second of silence you can create and find in this place. We try to discuss the idea of how we can turn this to put the people in the environment of trauma environment as the character leaves. So how they hear the sound, how those people or the survivor of a trauma, they hear it, not as we just as an audience we know it as identify it like, okay, sound of warplane should be sound of warplane, sound of the bomb should be sound of the bomb. No, me as a survivor of trauma and PTSD, and as a survivor of the war, there is a different way how I hear things when I was in the middle of this situation. The same things for the people who living there for for more than 9 years under the bomb, daily bomb. It didn't stop, and they lived with this fear all the time. So that it started to be like their daily environment around them. So we try like to bring how they hear it. I discuss with them a lot of time how you hear it, how you hear the warplane. They said like we hear the warplane like a monster. Like jumping and attacking us, like kind of want to eat us. So the sound, they hear it like in hypersensitive way, more than it is in this way, and that try to bring how they feel psychologically about that. I start like to film and document it in interest of love of the cinema and telling the story, and I turn from this motivation and patience about that to the person who have a responsibility, and the responsibility turn to moral duty, because I turn from a filmmaker to witness on the war crime that happening on me. And then this is the shifting from this moment from storyteller to witness. It's also shifted with me my responsibility from responsibility of filmmaker that okay, I tell the story or don't want to tell the story, or to this where I have to tell this what's happening, because also there's a legal perspective from that. I have to carry, I have to tell what's happening in front of me. I have to share what's happening with me, but also there is a responsibility for a society that effective, including my mom, my father, my sisters, my relative who was living in Syria, the people that I did, they was turned from people unknown from me to the part from my family, part from my close circle. That where the responsibility of the filmmaker, for me as a filmmaker, turn. And this is why the film turned to like a kind of a boat for surviving, or like a way for a platform for surviving. Generally, I don't have money in my in my pocket. I really like I was almost broken financially, and the people think that making movie could make you a person who's with a suitable situation financially. No, making a movie could make your life not easy financially in this side, and especially if you face another level you have to deal with in general way. I went in the middle of the quarantine to start off a new film and trying to tell a new stories without thinking about myself in the financial side, but also like thinking about my mission as a filmmaker, what I can do with what's happening with me in a case that I'm filming, which is I start to film the story about the court suing the war crimes in Germany, in Koblenz, and I was one of the witness on this court and survivor also. I tried to tell the story from personal perspective, and it was start at the beginning of the quarantine in Germany. Why we do this is film. This is my last word. We do this as film because really the intention of us, how we can save our culture and how we save the people who's doing a great services for the other people. And that was the important part of the story.